I said, Colin, how is he? And he said, I don't think that he's going to survive. And I said, he said he's not breathing, he's undergoing CPR, and none of the kids who were there really knew how to do CPR, but there was nothing else there. It was in the Badlands of Tibet, meaning that it was completely
isolated,
grass and just very isolated. And so he put the phone up to Morgan's ear, and I told Morgan that we loved him, that we were proud of him, and not to be afraid. And immediately when I did that, I got this incredible hug from Morgan. And every time I tell this story, I get the same hug. It's kind of amazing. It just was so encompassing and so wonderful. And I knew that he wasn't gone.
The two biggest questions from my perspective in life: why are we here and what happens after we die? Well, we examine near-death experiencers' accounts from all over the world, men and women, and their fascinating trips across the veil. We appreciate you joining us here on the channel, and don't forget, when you're done, if you wouldn't mind, to like, share, and subscribe, and leave us your comments.
Welcome to another edition of What's Death Got to Do With It here on the Near Death Network on YouTube. Each week we have an opportunity to examine experiencers' near-death experiences, how it affects their life, how it affects those in their families and their surrounding loved ones. Also, academicians and clinicians who are now edifying, I believe, that death is not as we thought it was, as we were raised to believe it is, that it's an extension of consciousness, that there is no finality to death. And what we're going to broach today is very interesting, and it could be sensitive for some people, but it's the passing of children and then their ability to interact with their parents and give them the opportunity to realize just exactly what their life plan was and give them the impetus to continue, because as you know, that would be a very difficult situation to encounter. And that brings me to our guest today. Elizabeth Boisson has founded Helping Parents Heal. And Elizabeth, we're so glad that you could come by today, because this is a market segment that a lot of people are reluctant to talk about. I mean, some people feel like if we even talk about it, then that's going to bring on the passing of one of our children. But that's not true. You and I visited briefly before we came on. We believe that these are all agreed to prior to incarnating, whether the audience believes it or not. That's what I personally believe. But thank you so much for stopping by. Before we get into the organization, who are you? How did you grow up? Where did you grow up? Were you spiritual, religious, or both?
Thank you so much for having me on here, Mark. And I am so excited to talk about the connection between having a child who transitions and being able to connect with them, and also healing, because I think that it's really important on our healing path to be able to know that our kids are still right here and also find ways to connect with them. But I grew up in the States in a lot of places. My dad was a university professor, and then he started working for WHO. So we lived in India for about 5 years. Wow. And I also lived in France, in the south of France, once I finished my studies at UNC, and then also in the south of France at Paul Valéry. And then I started teaching there and had all 3 kids, and met beforehand, I met my very wonderful French husband, and who adores Arizona, by the way, since we are here in Arizona. He's kind of like a French cowboy. And we raised them mostly in France, and then we came over to the States. And unfortunately, I've had 2 children transition, and I can talk about that later. It's not really important to start right now with that. But when I did, I was searching for support groups to help me be able to understand what had happened and know where they were, because with Morgan, with my eldest, who had transitioned at the base camp of Mount Everest in Tibet, I had a shared death experience with him, which is similar to a near-death experience, although you're not yourself, the person who is actually transitioning. It's a very close loved one. And that kind of changed my life. It was the second child that I had transition. Chelsea transitioned when she was 2 days old in France. And so it sent me on this incredible journey to find other parents who had experienced the same thing, because I wanted to know how they were moving forward in healing and if they were getting all the same signs and connections from their children.
So let's go back. So Chelsea transitioned first, correct? And she was only 2 days old. That had to be just remarkably devastating, because you're never prepared for something like that. Was it a sudden illness, or what exactly happened there?
Oh, it was when she was born. She was born early. I had been in the hospital for 2 months to try to keep the contractions from happening. And then she was on a ventilator for 72 hours, and they took her off the ventilator and she transitioned. At that point, I hadn't seen Morgan for 2 months, and he was about 2 years old at the time. He was living with my mother-in-law. And what really saved me from having Chelsea transition was having Morgan with me and being able to have him 100% of the time after that. And I also feel very fortunate because I had 2 other daughters who now are 31 and 29. So both of them are a huge part of my life. And we were a very lucky family in that we were able to have these other 2 children. But so she was the first. And as soon as that happened, I felt as though I had 1 foot here and 1 foot on the other side. But I didn't know very much about the afterlife. I was open to it. I had lived in India. I had been practicing yoga for many years. And I was also a vegetarian. And I say that because I think that we can find ways to raise our vibration. And there are lots of different ways that people use. But one of the ways that I use is being a vegetarian, because I know that it helps me to raise my vibration, along with meditation and yoga and different modalities that I use.
Well, we've got a lot to unpack here with your story and the organization. So let's move forward to what I'm sure a lot of the audience is curious about, which would be the shared death experience with Morgan. So he's at the base camp. You get a call. He's in distress. He's obviously very challenged. And then if you can relate the actual transition, but then also the communication, I think that would be very good.
I would love to. And I feel very grateful for this experience, because I know that it doesn't happen to all parents, but I also realized that maybe Chelsea had set things up so that I was able to receive that shared death experience, because she was always already over there. But I know that when Morgan had gone up to the base camp, no one was able to wake him up at 9 a.m. He was foaming at the mouth. So the kids picked him up and put him on the bus, and they only had 1 little oxygen tank, and tried using it on him, but he couldn't breathe at all anyway. So part of the way down the mountain, and this was after the director had been able to get in touch with me and let me know that Morgan was struggling, they had to stop the bus because Morgan had stopped breathing. And this is a kid who is and was 280 pounds, 6'7". So it wasn't easy to get him on and off the bus. Luckily, there were about 14 of them in all. And so they took him off the bus, and the director had given me Morgan's roommate's number. And when I got him, I said, Colin, how is he? And he said, I don't think that he's going to survive. And I said, he said he's not breathing, he's undergoing CPR, and none of the kids who were there really knew how to do CPR, but there was nothing else there. It was in the Badlands of Tibet, meaning that it was completely dust,
Isolated. Yeah.
grass, and just very isolated. And so he put the phone up to Morgan's ear, and I told Morgan that we loved him, that we were proud of him, and not to be afraid. And immediately when I did that, I got this incredible hug from Morgan. And every time I tell this story, I get the same hug. It's kind of amazing. It just was so encompassing and so wonderful. And I knew that he wasn't gone, no matter the fact that I knew that he was also not breathing. I could feel him with me. And I could feel all of the joy that he was also experiencing. I think that one of the things about these near-death experiences is that we are immediately surrounded by love. And in shared death experiences, it's also very similar. There was just so much love that I felt. And in fact, I was in the office. I'm in the casita right now, but I was in the office at the time. My husband was beside me, and he said, can I speak to Morgan? Because he saw that I was doing pretty well. And I said, no, I'm sorry. I don't think that he's going to make it. He can't talk back. And my husband was absolutely devastated because he wasn't having the same shared death experience that I was having. And so it was very difficult for him. It was very difficult for my two girls as well. But I think that being around me and understanding all of the signs that I was getting, and then they were getting these signs as well. In fact, both of my daughters are incredibly intuitive. It really helped to help all of us heal as a family.
Well, and I really believe, and you and I visited about this before the show, but that men, we don't give ourselves the license to really break down until it's at the breakdown point, right? Because that's how we're taught and conditioned. Suck it up, be a man, those types of things. And that's why hopefully these types of shows will enable people, not to say that your husband was like that, but a mother's love is, you carried, your son in you for that 9-month period. You have a bond that's inextricable. Not to say that we don't have a bond with our children, because I have two daughters, very similar ages to yours, 32 and 30. In fact, one of them's having our first grandson around Christmas, so we feel incredibly blessed.
Congratulations. That's
But I think that we also talked about this before the show, that men need an opportunity to say it's okay to grieve. It's okay to be emotional. It's okay to consider that death is not finite, but you're not thinking about all those esoteric concepts when your child transitions. So how did you have the ebb and flow of after this spiritually transformative shared death experience with Morgan? How did you jump forward into creating Helping Parents Heal? Because what a wonderful organization to really assist and hold people's hands. And then you introduce mediums and people who can bring messages forth that are consistent with their loved ones who have transitioned. How did that all come about, and how much time after Morgan's passing had elapsed before you created Helping Parents Heal?
Well, that's a very good question, because immediately after Morgan transitioned, the only thing that I wanted to do was to find other support groups where I could go and talk about these signs that Morgan was sending me. And all of the other support groups that were available would, as we were going around the sharing circle, I would start saying, can I share this sign with Morgan? They'd say, no, we don't talk about anything spiritual in this group. And then I would have started to describe it a little bit, and people in the parking lot would come up to me and say, I've had the same thing happen. I know exactly what you're talking about. Tell me more about this. So a week after Morgan transitioned, I started the Facebook group and met people from all over the world, which is really exciting, that were also experiencing the same thing, but they didn't have a forum to talk about it. So that was in 2009. So he transitioned on the 21st of, or the 20th, depending on which country you're in, of October in Tibet. And I started it a week later, and here we are, 2025. It's kind of amazing to think how much we've grown since then, but we now are available by Zoom and in physical meetings throughout the country, in Canada, in Brazil, in let's see, in the UK, if we're going that way, the UK, Norway and Sweden, as well as Dubai, as well as India, as well as, no, I'm missing some, as well as Australia, New Zealand, and Hong Kong. And we're going to have one in Saudi Arabia soon as well. I'm trying to think if I've missed. We have a big presence in Canada as well, as well as in other countries, because we have a lot of members who join who aren't necessarily from the States and other places, but we have caring listeners who are available to speak to parents who speak 11 different languages, not each one, but we have 11 different languages spoken by our caring listeners. And our caring listeners are not therapists. They are simply parents who have gone down the healing path and who reach a hand back to help others forward. Dr. Mark Pitstick is the head of the caring listeners, and he is very strongly supported by Lynn Hollahan, who is also one of our founding members of Helping Parents Heal.
Let's talk about the next step, which some people might find controversial, but I don't. To introduce mediums, people who can actually communicate with these children, bring through messages. You do remarkable conferences where these individuals with their aptitudes, which they say we all have, that we can tap into, correct? But they have, excuse me, a little bit more accelerated development, I guess, in that genre. How did you bring the mediumistic aspect to the conferences? And I would imagine some of those messages are just remarkable.
Well, they are. And one of the exciting things, and thanks for asking about that, one of the exciting things about these gallery readings, for instance, we always say that a reading for one of us is a reading for all of us. Especially Irene Bouvalidis, who's a very close friend, and she's the vice president of Helping Parents Heal. She also puts together conferences, but when you're in one of these gallery readings and you see these things happen to parents, especially the most skeptical of parents, and it seems to me that when you're going into the gallery readings, frequently the people who are the strongest believers, who really, really want to connect, who have been telling their sons or daughters to come through that day, they're not necessarily the ones that that spirit decides will be the first to come through. The ones that come through are the ones that are almost disinterested, disconnected, because that energy is sometimes hard for mediums to connect to. It's sometimes easier just to connect to that dad who came along with the mom who is really, really interested in this, and he's not at all. But it's incredible to see the difference between the beginning of the reading and the end of the reading. And it's true, we all can do this. I'm sure that you can do this as well. Every single one of us can. We need to work at it and train ourselves. And that's one of the things that Helping Parents Heal does, is to offer tools to allow us to have a stronger connection with our children in spirit, but also to be able to receive dream visits from our children in spirit, to practice meditation, they have 3 different groups specifically for meditation, guided meditation, and chakra meditation that meet by Zoom. We also have classes on how to use a pendulum to connect with our children in spirit, as well as automatic writing, as well as forest bathing, as well as, I mean, the list is very, very long of different ways that allow us to connect with our children in spirit. And we know that they are working just as hard as we are to connect with us. And people who are intuitive in our groups see these kids that are all there at every single meeting who high-five each other every time that they get us to smile. So if one of the moms or dads is really down and a medium comes to them and gives them a fabulous reading, or if they're able to share a validation that really, really makes them happy and they smile about it, they high-five each other because it's so exciting for them. So it's a big team of kids and parents who work together.
Well, and I think we've done a couple of shows on signs, and I believe signs are out there all day long, and sometimes we don't acknowledge the sign because we think it's going to be me saying, Elizabeth, I'm fine. Don't worry about me. It could be that provocative. Rarely, though, in my experience with that genre that you deal with, is it that way? Perhaps it's a butterfly. It's a symbol. It's something on a billboard that you drive by that was a shared interest of you and your loved one, whether it's your child, your mother, your aunt, whoever you were close to. Because let's face it, everything is frequency and vibration. So when I'm tuning to an AM radio station and I'm getting all that static, the static is what holds us back. And our ability to not be open. You don't have to say it's true, but be open. If you're open to it, then that frequency and vibration can attune to where you are and make it more of a modus operandi, if you will, to present that information to you. Do you find that's true in what you guys do?
Right. It's so important for people to be open because that's the only thing that's needed. And then once you start getting the signs, you need to say thank you whenever you see them. And maybe you'll be skeptical in the beginning, and that beautiful rainbow that appears just when you're thinking of your son or daughter, think, oh, those things happen all the time. Just say thank you, and then just see if these kinds of things happen again. I get my son's car. It's a Toyota Tacoma that's red. In threes every time that I am asking him an important question. It's pretty amazing. And so I know what the answer is. We live right behind the Spurcross recreation area, but and it's rare to see bobcats, but we always see bobcats on special days, like his birthday. We had one that came up, it was purring, which you're not supposed to touch bobcats, but I was just amazed to see this beautiful animal coming up to me. He was a wildcat at the U of A and a cheerleader there. So we always feel that it's very significant. His best friend was Wilbur Wildcat, who was actually a friend it wasn't a real person, but he was the mascot.
But it's the symbol again. It's the symbol of the sign.
And I also think that it's important to realize that these symbols are things that siblings also experience. So we also have an enormous Helping Fathers Heal group. And you were talking about the difficulty of fathers being able to talk about their children in the way that moms do immediately and to heal the way that we do. We also have a siblings group, and all of them talk about these signs that we're getting from our kids that are helping us to move forward and heal. But even more important, I think that our connection with our children in spirit is allowing us to know that there's more. And I believe, and this is something that I've heard from the very beginning of my journey, that the children on the other side are ultimately going to save the world, which sounds pretty almost like a Superman episode or something. And I couldn't understand it at all at the time, because this was in 2009 when things were going very smoothly. Of course, there were different conflict areas throughout the world, but it wasn't something that made a lot of sense. I feel as we move forward with a lot of turbulence here in the States and then all throughout the world, that being able to understand that they are helping us to become better people, and also helping us to help others, because helping others is one of the best ways to heal, is to reach a hand back and pull someone forward. But all of us together are going to be able to do great things. It just, we have to get through this. It's kind of difficult. 9 years, people say.
Right. Well, and for you to have the ability to be open to that, I think hope is what you give too, and you give validation. So hope is kind of a nebulous concept that is, but very important. But you give validation too with these messages that only these individuals could know, right? So that brings them solace to the degree. Obviously, they miss their children. We will always miss those who have transitioned into spirit, but we're with them always. We need this. We need to get away from this line of demarcation that they're not with us anymore. They're with us all the time. Now, does that mean you're going to have a conversation with these individuals all the time? No, because they're busy doing what they're doing too. We're busy doing our roles. And so if you could wrap this up, because I know you're under some time constraints, talk about if you're a parent who's lost a child, how they can get a hold of you, and then what are some of the periodicals that you referenced earlier that they can get a hold of?
Thank you. That would be wonderful. First of all, I just want to say that Helping Parents Heal has a different language than other support groups. So we call ourselves Shining Light Parents. We're never a bereaved parent, because that's one of the saddest words in the dictionary. We also never say that our children are lost. We say that they have passed. They've passed from one side to the other. They are so much more found than we are. They haven't died. They are still right here. In fact, when you start realizing that they are, you see them in every single aspect of your life. I feel as though Morgan is kind of still in China and that I can still reach him by phone. I think that a lot of parents kind of feel that way as well. So there are a lot of resources through Helping Parents Heal. Our website is helpingparentsheal.org. We're a nonprofit and have been since 2012. We have 3 different books that have been published. The first one was based on the documentary by Craig McMahon, which is called Life to Afterlife, Helping Parents Heal the book. And this has 20 different parents who have moved forward and healed, and they write about their journeys, and many of them are board members of Helping Parents Heal. We also have Helping Fathers Heal, which was written by Chris Ryan, but it's also a compilation of, I believe, 29 different dads who are in Helping Fathers Heal. It's entitled Hope, Grief, and Our Search for Connection. So and then it was co-edited by Tom Madsen, who's one of the affiliate leaders for Helping Fathers Heal as well. We also have Shining Light Parents Speak. This was put together by Mark Pitstick, Dr. Mark Pitstick, and Lynn Holohan, based on the interviews of 150 caring listeners and affiliate leaders. And it is a book that tells about how they have moved forward and healed, but it also goes into all of the signs, all of the different important information, different methods to heal as well. So this is a great book. This was the last one that published. And we also have a bi-yearly conference that is held every 2 years. Whenever those conferences are held, we always make sure that we have 100 scholarships available through fundraising to be able to welcome parents who might not have been able to come otherwise.
Well, I think you're doing a remarkable job because a lot of people who are going through just incredible grief at the time of the loss of a child, no matter where they are philosophically and religiously, need to have validation from first person accounts. You're a first person account. You've assembled a cadre of people who are first person accounts. So if they want to have, if somebody wants to poo-poo their hope based on what's happened, you have a collection of data from people who have gone through the experience. And hopefully through shows like this and in shows that I know you do constantly, and the work of like Dr. Jeff O'Driscoll, who's a mutual friend of ours, who is a metaphysician, but also just lost his daughter Rachel, and he's grieving no matter what, but his signs are the rainbows. He sees rainbows from Rachel, and that validates that she's fine, she's doing well. So people like that, first person accounts, are so incredibly poignant and powerful, and we really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to do this. Let's do a second segment though, because there's a lot to unpack in what you're doing.
I would love that. It's been really a wonderful morning. I hate to say that I do need to leave to go and get my x-rays done, but hopefully I'll be a lot better next time. I won't be so they're gonna get better, but so
you definitely will.
And it's such a pleasure to speak with you, Mark. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for having us. And we will put all your information that you talked about in the show notes. And this will help so many people. Like you said, I subscribe to the axiom, if someone's having a bad day, help someone else. If you help someone else out, you're deferring and you get just that warm, fuzzy feeling. That's why we're all here, right? To help each other. As Jeff says, you know, walk back to God, you know, take that walk home, what he calls the other side, home. So thank you for sharing everything with us, Elizabeth, and best of luck at your doctor's appointment.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to speak to you, and I'll see you soon, Mark.